Although it's been less than a year since Leagues 4, a lot has changed in the world of RuneScape, which means that we have a lot of new exciting things to look forward to in Leagues 5. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome back to another Leagues 5 video. And you might have guessed that today we're covering all of the big changes from Leagues 4 to Leagues 5. You can expect a little bit of area theory crafting, and this might help you start to think about which regions you want to pick. Now, the current understanding with Leagues 5, and it hasn't changed as far as I'm aware, is that we'll still only get 3 region choices outside of Mistlin and Karamja. And some people aren't too happy to be starting in Mistlin again, but let me tell you why that's great. While Mistlin has typically been a pretty tame region for those big item and boss unlocks, this region has received some considerable updates. Scurious the Rat King came into old school RuneScape back in January 2024 and can be found in the Varrock sewers. This boss is super accessible for low level accounts and drops pretty decent loot, but more importantly, rewards some really insane combat experience, rivaling that of the Nightmare Zone or AFKing sand crabs. Expect this place to be super busy pretty much throughout the league in just leveling up stats as quickly as possible. The Defender of Varrock quest also came to Mistlin this year, and with that came the Zombie Axe. This weapon is not only accessible before the big 85 Slayer requirement for the Abyssal Whip, but with melee accelerated relics or combat masteries for Leagues 5, it could quite easily be the best weapon to carry you through until your late game weapon unlocks. The other big new piece of content that's come to Mistlin ahead of Leagues 5 are Tormented Demons. These guys can be found in the Gathixian dungeon below the Lumbridge Caves, and Tormented Demons drop the Tormented Synapse, used to make some incredibly strong Demon Bane weapons. These weapons are really useful in plenty of places around the game actually, and their stats are really comparable to other late game weapons. They also drop the Burning Claws, which could be so much fun when paired with any relics that boost special attack regeneration or spamming special attacks like the Leagues 4 Weapon Master relic. I really hope we see a return of that in some form or function within the combat masteries. In fact, I'm pretty certain we will. Now, I will caveat that by saying that we still don't know at this stage what region unlocks will be required to auto-complete a quest like While Gothic Sleeps. Personally, I hope that this is unlocked after reaching a certain milestone within the league, like unlocking your final region or reaching a certain point threshold. Something like that would give everybody access to Tormented Demons. Let's move on, and I'm not going to cover every region because not every region got a new piece of content this year. So let's do a quick roundup. The Vmore region is a new addition to Leagues 5, and this will be separate to Korend for anyone wondering. In Vmore, we have the Sulphur Blades as a pretty good early game slash weapon, all of the Perilous Moons gear which fulfill all aspects of the combat triangle, and will be really interesting to see how they perform once we know a little bit more about the Leagues 5 combat masteries. I really hope Jagex have designed something with some of the new mechanics in mind. Also in Vmore is the Colosseum, the quiver being the new best in slot range cape item, as well as the throwing weapon which, listen, I can't pronounce it so I'm not going to try, but this thing is generally just used as a ranged special attacking weapon for reducing defense. However, it does hit twice and may see some use as a generally good ranged weapon if we see a means to reduce its attack speed significantly, like we've seen in previous leagues. The new group boss encounter will drop the Dragon Hunter wand, but more interestingly, a new ranged armor set. This new ranged armor set is a straight upgrade from Blessed Dragonhide, which already has some really generous ranged and prayer stats, so this armor set is just another reason why I think Vmore is one of the best regions that you can choose as your first unlock. The Wilderness got Undead Pirates this year, which have introduced an even earlier way to make money, get some gear upgrades before you go over to the Rev Caves or start tackling some of the Wildy bosses. Speaking of which, some of the Deep Wilderness bosses also got a slight rework to their drop table. Notably, the Chaos Elemental and Scorpia, and the Rogue's Castle chest deep in the Wilderness are now an incredible source of GP, runes, and supplies if you can get the thieving level for it, that is. Over in Mauritania, Araxor has arrived. This one is sure to be popular amongst people looking to go down a melee-oriented route for Leagues 5, as Araxor offers an upgrade to the best-in-slot melee amulet with the Amulet of Rancor. Granted, this would require Kandarin to take advantage of, as it upgrades directly from the Amulet of Torture. The Spider Queen also drops the Noxious Halberd, which could be a lot of fun when paired with some of the melee combat masteries. Perfect in the Theatre of Blood, as most of the enemies in there are weak to slash. The Araxites within the cave here as well can drop the Arania boots, which serve as an almost complete replacement for Dragon boots when it comes to strength bonus. In Leagues 4, the most popular 3 region choice for melee users was Asgania, the Desert, and Mauritania. And I can definitely see a world where the desert gets replaced by Kandarin in Leagues 5 with the introduction of Echo bosses, potentially making Kandarin a better choice for unique drops, but also so that people can really test out those max melee hits with the new amulet. Okay, now that we've covered the big new quests and bosses and items that have come into the game, it's time for possibly the biggest change: Project Rebalance. Now, I have done a previous video on the details within Project Rebalance, so I'm not going to get into it too much. I have linked that down below if you did want to check it out though. So I'm just going to get into the changes that I think are pretty impactful on region picking for Leagues 5. Before we get into that, I just want to say a quick thank you for supporting videos like this. Now that Leagues 5 has been announced, I'm super excited, and I'm sure you guys are too. I'd massively appreciate it if you guys like the video so it could be seen by other people who are fans of Leagues, and of course, if you're not subscribed, help us hit that 15k subscriber goal. And thank you very much. Let's get into the rest of the video. When it comes to item adjustments with Project Rebalance, it's probably affected the magic style the most. And in my opinion, these changes are a healthier balance for Leagues 5 in particular. In previous leagues, players picking magic felt pretty hard done by if they didn't pick Kandarin, because this region gave access to the Occult Necklace and Tormented Bracelet for a massive 15% magic damage boost. Since Leagues 4 though, the Occult Necklace has been nerfed to only give 5% magic damage. And in turn, other regions have seen a bit of a buff to magic damage through some of the robes obtained throughout. There are quite a few here, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I will link the blog post to Project Rebalance if you did want to check it out. I think interestingly, Kourend is looking particularly strong for magic, because not only does Augury now give a magic damage boost, but Ancestral Robes have seen a buff to the magic damage they give, and we now know that all 3 mega rares can drop from any one raid, meaning that you could get the Tummakan Shadow from the Chambers of Xeric. While we're on the topic of the Tummakan Shadow, it pretty much dominated the magic style altogether. And while it's still likely to be the best weapon for overall magic DPS thanks to its passive, we still don't really know what the Echo Boss variant items are gonna do when it comes to magic. There may be something that's better, but also we've had the introduction of elemental weaknesses this year, which means that some of the other options have closed that DPS gap. Don't get me wrong, the gap is still very much there, but who knows what these combat masteries have in store for us. I'm really hoping that Jagex are going to take advantage of some of the changes they've made this year, and who knows, we may even see elemental damage be even more prevalent within the league. Here are some notable bosses with elemental weaknesses, which put weapons like the Kodai one, the Nightmare Staff, on a much better level if you want to mix up your region choices this time around. On top of elemental weaknesses, we also had some big changes to NPC defenses this year, with different ranged weaknesses being introduced and existing melee weaknesses being exaggerated somewhat. This is really exciting for Leagues 5 because it won't just be a simple case of use this weapon until this unlock and then just use that weapon forevermore. But again, this kind of comes down to whatever Jagex do with the combat masteries. Hopefully they decide to plug in some of those NPC defense changes to make them even more rewarding to itemize correctly for. Aside from Project Rebalance's item changes and NPC defense changes, there were also a ton of skilling changes introduced. And these made previously less popular training methods more viable, like Blast Mining, the Brimhaven Agility Arena, the Mage Training Arena, thank God. thieving from stores, clue scrolls from pickpocketing, the list goes on. And while these are great in the main game, they're not going to be massively game-changing for Leagues 5 and impact your decision when it comes to regions. Moving on from Project Rebalance, I have of course saved the biggest 2 changes, in my opinion, until last. The first change, and probably the most obvious change, are the Echo boss variants and the items that we'll be able to get from them. For example, we know that the Cowfight Queen is finally offering the desert a really strong and competitive ranged option, which was a style that it was previously lacking in. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is the theme of the Echo boss items. Are they there to make up for that region's weakness? Does that mean Mauritania will finally get a decent ranged weapon? Kandarin currently lacks melee options, Taranwin doesn't really have any good magic gear, and Fremennik and Karamja are just, they lack a bit of everything, so I'm interested to see what they do here. The last change that was only recently announced that personally I was really excited to see is that we'll finally be able to get multiple unique drops from a raid. And no, I don't mean that you go into a solo raid and you pull 3 Tumakan Shadows, but if you're raiding with a group of friends in the Tombs of Amaska or the Theatre of Blood, then multiple people will finally be able to get a unique drop. In Leagues 4, it felt kind of bad not being rewarded for playing with others. It was just a all-round negative experience, just solo raiding and never really interacting with other players. I could just imagine the mega-scale raids in Tombs of Amaska and Chambers of Xeric and just seeing all the different unique account builds and different choices that people have made along the way. I think that makes for a much more exciting and sociable League experience. And if you want an existing group of players to come join in with, then I've linked my Discord in the description. Come join us, you can get an invite to the in-game clan there, or you can just come to hang out, chat about Leagues or other main game stuff. Now, it might be a while before we actually get any solid new teasers or information about Leagues 5, but I will have plenty more Leagues 5 videos on the way, including of course an in-depth area guide for each region within the game. We'll be getting into even more detail this year than I did last year, and I'd like to give a shout out to the official Leagues Discord server. I will link that in the description because there is so much discussion going on there that it is bound to get you guys hyped up if you're not already a part of it. And I'm curious to know, what are you guys most excited for when it comes to Leagues 5? Be sure to let me know in the comments and I will catch you all in the next one.